Good evening once again. Welcome to another class on CSS. In today's lesson, we are going to be looking at CSS layout. CSS layout is a technique that developers use to place content on a web page, to distribute content in a way that is appealing to the user and the content is well presented, to the user. The idea of a layout is an ability for you to put content in a way that will make sense to the audience, and all your content will be properly presented. And that's the major purpose of what layout is all about. And to go about this, there are techniques and styles and pattern which you can adopt to give you what you desire. I will be checking out one or couple of things in the discussion of CSS layout, because layout is broad and there are techniques in which you can come about different layouts. So if you see a particular layout, you can use several techniques to get to that layout. But in getting those layouts, there are fundamental things that you need to know that will help you and aid you to understand what is happening on a CSS layout. One of the first things is the display property, which we've covered, a little bit. We talked about it a little bit, but in this lesson, we're going to say more about it. And then you have the floats. We're going to talk about floats, then positioning, and finally the grid. So these four things is what we are going to be looking at under CSS layout. Now, look at the image I have on the screen that shows you a kind of a structure of how, website looks like. And by the way, this is just a template. It could, be in a different format in terms of the navigational bar, for example, that's on the left-hand side can be on the top. Based on your preference or the preference of the designer, they could decide on where to put things. And you can have more columns, just based on the preference you want to do. So to put content, to display, to make elements arrange themselves in this way is what CSS layout is all about. Next slide. We have the display property, which I talked about, that we are going to be looking at. And the idea of a display property is to change the default behavior of an element. Elements I told you guys before now that there are primarily two display types. It's either it's an inline or it's a block. Remember, I mentioned that to you guys, inline and block, and I showed you experiments on how to see which ones were inline and which one was block. So let's quickly run through that. And H2, and I'll show you a div as well, right? And here I just say that this div, and I show you a span. So let me bring an image and then we are done. Okay, so let's style it so that we can see what's going on there. Styling everything. We're going to use our universal style selector, and so that it can quickly show us all the things that's going on. And the idea is to make the border visible for us to see. This is what I mentioned to you guys before, that we have two different kind of display. And I mentioned that we have block and inline. Each one is a block, meaning it does not allow anything to stay on the side. So that's how we have block. I want to do something that you can see. And let's have paragraph as well. Our paragraph is also a block. So let's do 1.5 or 1.6. So you can see the idea that a span is an inline. right? And the reason why I'm doing this again is to tell you that we have other display type and to use the opportunity to mention the other display type that you have and show you how they work. Now let's go inside here where we have our paragraph and add more span inside it. These span are outside the paragraph. Let's add some span inside the paragraph and notice the behavior. Do you notice that the span, continued like that? So let me put another text here and say, so it just continue. It doesn't care that there was a tag here. So the text before the span and after the span just continues as if nothing happened. So the reason why I'm showing you this, I want to explain some properties to you so that you get to see what's going on. I want to be able to differentiate all the type of display, the few ones I want to talk about now. First of all, let's talk about none. What is a none type of display property? What none does is to make it not available. You will use this when you are writing JavaScript, or even when you are doing some programming. You will want to hide some information. Most of the time, the way to hide information is to set the display property to none. When you set it to none, it looks as if it does not exist. Everything just disappears for that particular property. So let's target all span, for example, just for the purpose of experiments. Let's target all span and say we don't want all span to show. Now we are targeting by element name. And then how do we set display property of all span? We use display and the value we specify none. Now, do you see the results? The result is that everything span got disappeared as if they never existed in the system. That is one display type you need to familiarize yourself with. Again, I repeat, before now we mentioned that we are limited you guys to two display types, inline and block. And I mentioned in the course of other classes that we have several ones, but I'm limiting you to those two. Now is the time we need to learn other ones. The one I just showed you now is none, and the purpose of it is to make things disappear. You will see where you will need all these things, when you start doing JavaScript, because it's possible for you that you want to click a button and you don't want something to show. You can use JavaScript to control the display property of an element. You can even do it that once you take your mouse over it, the property should be set to none. So those things are features that you want to see. So let's just play around with it so that you will see how that can happen. Like when you take your mouse over this span, you want it to hide, kind of. You know that we have this pseudo class. Remember pseudo class? Then we have the over effect, right? Then once you take your mouse over it, you want the display property to be none. By default, do you see that once I take my mouse over it, the one I take my mouse over is the one that goes away, by the way, because my mouse is currently active. So let's make it 1 so that you know what is happening. Let me put a text in between so that you see that there's a text in between. Once I put my mouse over this span, that span disappears, right? Because of course, that's what I said it should do. That once your mouse goes over it, it should do as if that span never existed. Again, you will see practical example in the future. But for now, let's stick with this fact that you could actually set the property of an element to none. Moving on, the next one is inline. We've talked about inline. By default, there are elements that are inline by default. An example of them is span, which we've seen. You can change the property of any block element to inline. Yes, you can do that. So let's go ahead and let's set H1 because we have two H1s. You can change the pattern the way H1 is and say your H1, you don't want it to be block anymore. You want it to be inline. Then you do this. Do you see what happens? It makes inline act as if they are like span. Span is inline. So that's what happened. The purpose of showing you all this is because we're about creating layouts, and layout is about making elements behave the way you want them to behave. That's why I'm showing you display property. Moving on, we already understand this part. Another one is you can tell it to change its default settings. For example, span is inline. You want to change span from it being inline to what? To block. Do you notice what happened? All your span that used to be inline now becomes block. You need to know the default way an element renders. That's very key. You know that spans are inline. There will be a reason if you want to make it block, and when that reason comes, you know what to use to set it. Moving on. The last one, inline block. Block is combining inline and block together. If something is inline, you can't specify width because it's not a block element. Let's give it a test. I mentioned that you can set width of a block element. So this is an example of a block element, which is H1 future. So here I say, just to show you that we can do width of let's use percentage, 50%. Do you see what happens? Because by default, block item have 100% width. So you can set that. Let's go and try and do with span. So let's set width of span to the same 50%. Do you see that I did not respond? Because it doesn't have the capability to do that. It's not designed to do that. If you look at this, how do you then make span recognize width? There's a point whereby you want it to still be inline. You don't want it to be block. You want it to be inline, and you want the width to also take effect. So let's use, even though 50% is too much, let's just use 200 pixels because the 50 will take all the whole place. So let's use 200, and let me show you 200 of this as well so that we can use that to see the reference. So let's do 100. Let's do 160. So we can use that to reference what's going on. Now, if I go here now and say display is inline block, now do you notice what happened to your span? Your span now has the capability to receive the width. However, it's not fully blocked. If it's fully blocked, it will go to the next line. So let's look at how fully blocked look like. So if you make it a full block, it will go to the next line and implement your 160 width. So hence, that's the difference between inline and inline block. Okay, we have floats. Yes, we are getting to some interesting parts. Now, floats are used to shift, boxes to left and right. They allow content to display in a way you want it. So everything is a box. We already agreed on that part. Everything on the elements, all elements are boxes. So that's why it talks about you can shift a box. Now that you know that when you display elements, is in a block form. So once you have floated an element, all of the following elements will wrap around the floated element until until you clear them. So don't worry, we're gonna see example of how float and clear works. So you use float alongside with clear. That's the technology before they now made an advanced one, which is flex and what have you. But the focus for today we want to look at is how to use clear and float to create a template. And so let's get to the business and see how we can use float. I'm going to try and do a sample site. I'm going to do some using this box. Then I'm going to go ahead and do a full-blown site so that you are going to see it. Let's get two things up. Let's say I have a div here. And I say I have item 1. that I want to style my div. So this without no styling. If you present this, this is what you have. But what you want to do is you want to maintain one item on the left, one item on the, in fact, let's do a template so that you have a clear picture of what's going on. So what we want to achieve is we want to have a kind of a menu system up here, and or header, a kind of a header of a site up here. And on this side, you want to have a left navigation, or let's say a nav button, a navigational section here. And on the other side, on the right hand side, you want to have your content, and at the bottom you want to have your footnote of the site. Of course, let me go to this section so that you have a pictorial view of what we are trying to do. We are trying to do something like this, what you see on the bottom here, whereby you have a header, you have a left hand side, which is your nav bar, where you can click your navigational button. Then on the center, on the main content side, you have the main content, and then you have your footer. So this is what we are about to do, and I want to show you how to do that with using float and left. That's the idea. Now, we've not written any code, mind you, everything is just there, and we are about to start doing that. Our main header is very easy. It just takes over the whole place. The main difficult part is how to make sure that the navigational side and the content stay side by side. The most difficult part is to make sure that the navigational section and the content stay side by side. From our definition of what a float is, float allows you to put box elements, close to themselves, side by side, as opposed to it just taking a whole space like this. So let me give my navigational button a name, a class name, so that I can go and style it separately. I can target it and style it. So let me say this is my nav, and let me give my content name as well, so that I won't have issue in also styling it. And then I call it content and style. So I have my nav. I want to target my nav, and what you just need to focus on is the float property, which is the major bone of contention here. And the attribute you need to add is left. So immediately you do that, look at what you have. It creates that settings for you, where you have your header, and then you have this. So let me just do a universal stuff, so that it will give us a more better view of what's going on. Yes, so this is better. So look at what is happening. So this is like a site now. It's looking more like a site where you can have your navigational buttons here. So this can be list of link. You can even go ahead and start doing your link, kind of. You can start building list of link or something, where you can have your href. So this is supposed to be your list of links, right? Don't worry that it's overlapping. We're going to do that, and that's where the other part comes in. But let's look at it before I add the other parts. Let me show you again. This is how it looks like, and the reason why it's looking cool this way is because the size of the content here is equal to the size of the content here, and that's why it's not overlapping. But immediately the size of one changes, it looks ugly like this. So how do you fix this? The way to fix this is by using clear. What clear does is it clears the content and make everything on the same pattern. I told you the purpose of clear. The clear is when you are done with what you want to do, you are done with your floating, you then clear what you are doing to make all the columns align properly. Another thing you notice that we did is that, or we didn't do, is we didn't set floats for content. So let's go ahead and set floats for content. So we only did for navigation. Let's go ahead and set for content. So we come here we do our floats, and we have our left. Now, you can see what is happening. Immediately we do our left, what happened? This guy comes to take his position. I told you when you are done with your floating, what do? You run clear. When you are done with your floating, you run clear. So we're gonna clear here. This is what we're gonna use to clear, and we call it clear. It's not gonna have any content. The point is you want to use it to clear. Let's go ahead and clear what we've done. So there's a clear property, and what you do here, you say you clear both. So that's what the clear does, and you can see what happens. It has done what we need to do. Now the other thing you need to worry about is setting your width and height properly so that your content can fit in correctly. Obviously, the reason why it's looking this way is because we set the border, or rather, we set the border. So once your content goes in here, it's supposed to take in the position of all this place, and obviously this border not supposed to be showing, but because we are just doing a test for you to see what's going on, we make the border visible. So let's go ahead and complete what we are doing. So because this is a clear, I will cancel, nullify this padding I did here, and I can cancel my padding so that we can have a cleaner look. I've just cancelled my padding. What I then need to do is you can then specify the width of what you are doing. So you can say your navigational stuff is 20%, or let's say 15%, and your width of the content is okay. So we can have that adjusted to fit into what we want. A website in mind I want us to roughly design. Let me see, I have MSN in mind. Of course, we're not going to design the website fully, but we're going to pick out some concepts on the site and use it to explain what's going on. So this is the website. When you want to design a website, or you want to do any design, the first thing you need to do is to have that sketch. You do a sketch of what you want to achieve, and you also have a mental picture of what you want to achieve. So in this case, of course, we're not going to go in detail to design the whole thing. I just want to do a proof of concept and to show you how to use the margin and the left and clear, right? I'm going to be focusing on two things. I'm going to be focusing on the head section, and I'm going to ignore all these ones, but I'm going to find a way to put them in. Of course, I'm not going to do all these graphics effects. I'm not going to do all these things, right? Where I'm focused more is this section here, the boxes. And the reason why I'm focused on these boxes is because they make use of the left, the floating feature. It allows you to see the use of the floating feature. That's the reason why I'm making use of it. So without further ado, let's get into the coding. We have the top section. Inside the top section, we have a kind of, notice the left-hand side. There are space in the left-hand side and the right-hand side, right? So it means we'll have to put this in the middle. Then again, we might not copy it exactly, because the major point we are trying to do is to set the head section and to do this box. I want to do this box. That's the major thing I want to do. I want to place this box like this. And if we have time, we'll bring in the images and put in the text. And yeah, that's what I want us to achieve. And then we look at how we can achieve that. Let's give it a go. So we're clearing this. We're starting from beginning, and we're seeing how we can do that here. I think you will need it. We can still use this for help to guide us to know what's going on. It's very important if you are learning like this to have this guide to know what's going on in your, because everything is a box. I keep mentioning that, to know what's going on. If it's going on the way you expect it. If it's not, you will see that the elements will go out of position. It won't align right, and then you can use that to visualize and know what is going on. When you are done with your design, you can just simply remove the border thing, and then you continue with your design. So our head is pretty much okay in that section. You can see the head section is sitting well there. And the next thing that happened is that we have boxes. After the head, we have boxes. And again, you can even use this to design. In the head, you can have your logo section, you can have your search section, and then you can have your icon section before you then have the list of boxes. So we can just do something like that. So I can just say in the head, right, you have where you have your logo, you have your logo section. So most of the time I write it out like this. If you noticed how I design, I write it out so that you don't get lost what is going on there. You have your logo section, you have your search area. So again, I write search so that I know what's supposed to be there. And then I have my icon section. So to do this with floats, you can start by obviously floating these guys to the left. You can start by that. So I'll just give them their name. I'll just give them their name, and I want to give them an obvious name. And this, what I want to show you how you can style elements with multiple classes. This is new. I want to show you how you can style elements with multiple classes. So because you notice that we're going to be putting floats left a lot. So why can't I just say create a class and say floats left? This class does not exist though. I just coined it up and I just called it float left. So I have to go and do what it says it should do, right? By just going ahead to float left. Then I have to style the class. It's a class that I just created. And then I say display and I do left. Or rather, sorry, I do float and I go left. That's the idea. Notice what happened to our logo. Let's go ahead and increase the fonts. Again, as we fix what we are doing, we can remove all the fonts thing and put the proper fonts to it. So we have our logo, we have our search, we have our icon. Notice that we are supposed to put all of them on the same line. All of them are supposed to sit on the same line. Okay, notice that the search is in the middle, right? While the logo is on the left, the search is in the middle, and the icon is on the right. We are supposed to do all that. So by default, we are floating everything towards to the left. Remember the definition of float. You're moving, so I just put everything to the left. Now look at what happened there. Once you are done with your floating, what do I say you do? You are going to clear. So let's create our clear div. So I'll just say clear. It's not going to house anything. The purpose is to clear our floats so that we are done with that section. That's the purpose. So I'm going to create a class for what? For clearing, so that whenever we need it, we just call it. So our clear, we're clearing both. Then I make sure that my clear does not have all this border thing attached to it. I'll just say my border is none. Okay, so you can see that we are all good on top here. Remember I said I want to show you how to have multiple classes. I can actually have another class here and call this class logo. Or let's not deal with logo. Let's do search. Now notice I've not shown you guys this before. This is the first time I'm having two classes or two class names inside a class attribute. Notice the difference. There's a space in between them. a float left, and then I'm having a search, which I'm also want to create for you now. I'm about to create it. So what that means is that this guy, two rules are going to apply to it. It's going to go and check the CSS rule for float left, and it's also going to check the search, which I'm about to write now. So I'm going to go here and do for search. For search, what I just want to do is to say the width. The width is, I can say the width is 80%. Let's do 70%. And I now tell it that it should display, the text should be in the middle. Remember the search stuff was in the middle. Then I can have something like that display. So as I was saying, it's not only left that you can move item to. Notice we have been moving item to the left. It's just an easy way to just say everything go left. You could actually say things should go right. In the case of an icon now, maybe you want to stay on the right hand side. You can actually move it to the right hand side and it stays flush to the last part here. So let's go ahead and do, float right, for example. So we have float left, which has been defined here. We can define float right just for this purpose and say float right. This is a CSS, a class name, and then we can define float right here so that the icon can actually only float right and the rest can float left. So you can see that we have a space here, but it doesn't matter. So we have your logo sitting here, you have your search button, your search bar and everything sitting there. So this is cool. This is done. You're okay with this. You can move on and do other things. Notice the parent element. So you can actually play with this guy and set the padding or margin so that your logo is not too tight with your other menus that are there. So that to give that space, to give this kind of space that you have there, so you can do something like that. So let's just even let's try small. Let's try small. Let's bring in the logo. Take off the gloves, and that's this for now, so that we can have good visuals of what's going on. First of all, I want to style the whole body, and the idea of styling the whole body is such that we can have a very good font to look at. So I'm doing font size 1.1 rem. Okay, so let's do font family. Okay, that's good. So we're about to design this MSN stuff. Let's go ahead and give it a try. So we have a text box and then we have a button. So I will just put my type text. And let's go ahead and put our button. There's also this type of button. That's our search, but they have a search button there as an icon. So by default, we want to make sure that it's spaced out. What we are doing is spaced out. Let me try 10 and see what we have. So what I mean by spaced out is the padding, when you are typing your results. So that's what padding does for us. Give us that extra space that we have. And I think the width is enough, but let me do width of 80%. Let me do, let's do 60% of width. So another thing you want to focus on is now the search button. I think we're done with this. With the search button. So the search button flush towards this place. So how do you get your search button to behave like that? So you target it by name. And first of all, you don't want it to have search as a name. You want it to have an icon, right? So you then need to go and you need to search for search logo. Then just say search icon. You can pick anyone, but of course, you want to pick the one that has a transparent background. It's difficult to know the one that will come with transparent background. So let's pick this and save image as, and then let's just call it search. I hope it's coming as, okay, it's coming as PNG. So now that it has, come here, what you want to do is you can do padding, and the idea of padding is so that you can see what you have there. Because you don't have a text, is kind of not showing anything. So you can stretch it out by even specifying the width. What the width does is that it will give it like something to, like this width as you're seeing, but it doesn't have a content. You can also set the height, even though the easiest way is just to set the padding. So you can even set the height, and you have this kind of feature. But if you set the padding, what the padding does is this. So you can see what the padding does. Padding give you, something like that. But you can go ahead and specify the width and height. So I have padding like this, but you can see that it's not properly aligned. We're going to treat the alignment later. So now that I've set the padding, let's bring in the image from background image. Right, and then I have URL and a search.logo, search.png. Now it's not showing. You have to check why it's not showing. First, check that your logo, your icon is showing. So the icon is showing here. You need to figure out why it's not showing. There might be several reasons. The image might be too big. So it's very important to know what you are doing. So let's reduce it to like 16px and see what happened. Do you see that the image was too big? So me reducing it, showed that it was actually very big. And so let's have a perfect kind of angle for it. So 30 is too much. So I think 24 should be okay. 24 is okay. Then let's make sure that the background does not repeat. I think you guys already know this one. No repeat. And then let's position it in a center, kind of. Then you do background positioning. So positioning has you can do center. So center, meaning position in y-axis, position in z-axis. So that settles that. We also notice that there's if you look at this part here, there's an edge on the right hand side and on the left hand side. That's border right, left, and border. That's border radius right, border right radius. Okay, top left. So we're using top right. Top right. So let me try 10px. And let me do 8. So we're doing bottom right. Okay, so the moment of truth. So it still looks big. Let me reduce it to 20. And this time around, let's now make it, we now need to increase the width. So you can say, you don't even need to use the width. You can use the padding. I prefer using padding because it's just better. So this one is for top, left, right, and top, right, left, and bottom. So I want to do top 15. It's okay. Right, I want to do right is 30 or even 40px. So if you do something like this, so you can see the difference now. Then I can make it, let's say 35. Now, how do you now move it up and left to match this? You can see that it's not even the same height with it. So let's increase the height. Again, I will use padding to increase the height. So if I do 16, 17, 18, 19, you can see that it's increasing. So 18 looks to be the perfect. Okay, so this is what was wrong with it. There was a space in between them. That's the HTML. In the HTML, there's a space. So me closing that space closes that gap. So the next one we want to do is these boxes here. So we are done with this. We want to align the content of the box. We want to have 4 boxes, but let's use 3 boxes in this case. Notice that there's a line that goes from left to right here. So let's do a line on top here from after our clear, right? You can then do a line. So that's what our line allows you to do there. That's the line we have here. The next thing we want to do is these boxes here. So let's just use 3 boxes. So we need to clear all this one and start our box. But before we go, I want to use, you notice the extreme space you have on the left hand side and on the right hand side. I want to create that kind of effect for you guys to see. So what that means is that I need to create a container first that will house our content. I just call it like a container. Remember what I'm trying to do? I'm trying to create a kind of gap on the left hand side and on the right hand side. Because I'm trying to do that, I want to show you how it will look like here. So I'm going to do a border. So that you can see what is happening. You can see that it's close to the edge. So I want to create a kind of, I want to center this div, but I don't want to make it 100%. So let's go ahead and do that styling. Of course, I will just say I want the width to be in a specific range. So let's say I want the width to be 80% of the whole thing. And then I want to center it. Is to do margin auto. So when you do margin auto, it will align this to the center. So this is same thing as this. Do you see what happened here? So all the content that will be on this site now, you can see the left hand side is spaced and the right hand side is, and right hand side is spaced as well. Left and right side, are evenly spaced. So if you decide to do in the future, you say you want to do 50, right? Your content will be, saved, and everything will make sense. So let's maintain 90%. So of course, because the reason why I'm showing this red line is just to give us a visual display. So you can clear it and then begin to put your grid inside. Our boxes, remember, we want to put these boxes inside. I want to go, instead of 4, we'll do 3. Just to save time. Let's go ahead and put our boxes. Your box will be, I want to put it, I can put it in a container, but let me just put it without a container so that you see what it looks like. So I put a class and I say float left. I want to start putting the boxes, and I just say box 1 and box 2. Box 3. I think we should let's do 4 boxes. I don't know. Let's do 3 boxes. So I have those boxes right there. Do we have float left? Yes. So those are those 3 boxes. But you can see that they are all squished together, which is fine. But the idea of float left, it will float. It does the floating, put everything together. But you are not left to decide what each box is, the sizes should be. By default, you can play with 100%, so you can decide what each box is take. You also need to take a consideration that there are going to be, spaces in between those boxes. It's going to eat out of your 100%. So we need to be considerate. Now we need to then put a, when you're done, you need to clear. So don't forget, whenever you're using this, you need to clear. So I'm gonna run the clear guy class and call the clear. And what I'm going to do next is have more boxes. Once I'm done, I want to have more boxes. So you can see that I just created additional boxes. But I'm going to call this box 4, box 5, box 6. I want you to see the magic. That's why I'm creating all the boxes at once. However, the same method we did here to allow us to have more than one class name in a class attribute. That's what I want to do now. So therefore, I can then say that this should have a box class. All of this should have a box class. That's what I want to set now. That way, I can style a box class and everything will be applied, to all the boxes. So let's go ahead and start the box class and check out what we want it to do. Okay, so what we want it to do, let's look at the box. The box is, number one, we need to specify the width of the box. And there are 3 boxes, so we will use percentage and we'll start with 30%. And then we specify that they have padding on the right and on the right, so that to get this effect. And then we'll give it a border, a gray border. Let's go ahead and start with those 2 things and see what happens. So let's start with border. And let's do thin, solid, and let me do gray. So let me pick the color. Yeah, let me pick something like this. Okay, so I have that. Then I need to specify the width. So let's do 30% and see what happens. So that's 30% of the width. Notice that we need to have padding right. Padding right is very important to create that kind of space margin. Margin is after the border. So let's do margin so that we can see what we're looking at. So you can see the margin is okay. Then let's do the bottom as well. The bottom will help out for the box 1 and box 2 and box 3. The bottom will come out so you can see the difference. So that has given us that effect. The next thing we wanted to do is to create a padding in between the box 1 and the wall. Notice what we have here. The text does not hit the wall. There's this stuff here. So let's go ahead and create that padding. I think that padding can be 5. Let's try 10 and see the effect. So you can see what 10 does. So let's create 5. And the reason why your grid is not breaking is because when you add the margin plus the padding plus the width is more than 100%. Do you get? That's what is happening. Because we're using 30%. Whatever 30% is equal to, when you add it with 10px, you add it with 5px, it's now more than, that's why your this guy is breaking. That's the purpose. So you can reduce your percentage to a manageable length. Let's say 28. So 28 seems to work. You can even try 29 if it works. 29 also seems to work. So that's fine. So again, because we are using relative sizes, it will come out well when you are testing like this. So later you get to learn how to do responsive. We've not gotten to responsive section yet. So we're still working with floats. So moving on, let's see. The other thing we wanted to add is how you can then have these images on each of these stories that you have here. So again, you can specify height. as the case may be here, you can see that it has equal height. Everything has equal height. So you are free to just put your height there. And you can do, let's try 100. I think 100 looks good. Now is another moment of truth where we'll go and put our sample story and then a write-up. So we need to put a story there and a write-up. We can reduce the number of fonts or the font size because this font looks to be very big. So let's reduce the font size. Is okay now. So our image should sit like in the middle or kind of 2/4 or 1/4 of the page. So 100 looks to be too much as the height. Let's do 90 or 80 or 85. So let's go and bring in images and see how they will fit in. And before we bring in images, so this now tell you what is going on here. So whatever we need to do, before we bring in images, let's even go ahead and write the code for the images so that our image will just come and sit and will just be okay. So how do you bring in images here? In fact, we can even use the MSN logo as the image. Inside what we are doing, we are also floating left. May I remind you that this is also float left because you have two elements sitting side by side. You have an image, which is an inline element, and then you have a text or a link, which is also an inline element. How can you have it look like this? Do you get? How can you have it look like this? So that's what we're about to do. And they even went a step further by putting the source of the media or of the message on the bottom. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4 line item. The fourth line item happens to be the source. I think we'll see if we can also pull that off. Can we pull that off? Let's just pull off this left and right. Let's do this left and right for now. Okay, so we have our image. Just bring in your image, src. For now, let's use our MSN logo. Our MSN logo is taking over everything, so you can just specify. And the good thing about it is that you can specify a percentage. Very important, because you don't want to be fixed. You'll be working with different size of screen, so you can just work with a percentage. That way your image will just respond to what you need to do. So we can do 25%, let's do 30% of the entire space. So this is 30% of the entire space, and the idea is that we want our text to sit right in front. I'm going to copy what they have in one of the sites and see what it does. Again, because you want to style this, you can just put it in span. And you can either put it like that, but I recommend you put it inside a span. Now, of course, the reason why it's too big is because we have a text. What they've done here is that they've made sure that the text that is going to come in here, it fits into everything. So look at what happens here. When it overflow, it has a dot. So it's not time to teach you overflow yet, but it's part of this layout thing. Because when text overflow, you are supposed to be able to handle it. Sometimes you don't control the text that come in. You should be able to handle text when it overflows. So that is, we won't handle that now. We'll handle that when we're talking about, positioning and everything like that. But it's something that we're going to cover. Okay, let's move on. So let's reduce it to something that is manageable, that is within the view. Okay, that's within our view. Now there are several ways in which we can whatever we did to align all these 6 boxes is the same thing we are going to do to align these 2 items. It's as simple as that. I'll repeat that again. The same thing we did to align these 6 boxes is the same thing we're going to do to align this guy. It's as simple as that. You just specify the class and you say float where? Float left. Do you see what's happening? It's as easy as this. You say float left and it float left. And the next thing you want to do, what I want to do now is I don't want to style the 30% here. Let's take it outside so that we can give this image a proper class name and call it, it's already floating left. We want to style it further by saying box image, right? Box image. That's the image in a box. And then we'll remove the 30% so that we can style it outside. So we'll go ahead and style anything box image. So come here, we do box image. First of all, let's bring back our 35 width. We do our 35%. It's there. And you can then see, what happened here is there's a space in between the logo and let's bring in a proper picture because this is just a logo. Let's bring in this picture. I hope it will save this picture. Yeah, saving the picture. So I'll just call it PIC1. Then it's a JPEG. I saw it now. Let's call it PIC1. PIC1. So we have that there. So what we want to do now is to make sure that the height adjusts with this. So you have several options because what they've made sure in their template, notice all the images fit automatically. Notice that all the images, they fit, and that's because they've actually take time to do what they need to do. So if this image must fit, you must make sure that your font size fits the resolution of what you have done here. And of course, it's because we've used absolute, or rather relative. So if I increase this width now, it's going to match. Do you see that it's matching up? So that's the thing you need to know about what we just did now. It's going to match up. But what I want to show you is the space in between. You can see that it's closely tight. And that's where you can use your padding, and margin and what you already know. So you can say that the padding to the right, there should be a space. Padding to the right. So you can do a 2px or a 5. So if you extend this now, you should have this kind of view. Then you can go ahead and add other things. Now, the idea of what I'm doing here is that you understand what float is all about, how float can help you. That's the point of reference to all these things we are doing. The purpose of why you are doing all these things is to show you how you can use float and clear. That is the purpose. So with this, we were able to use float. The next thing is for you to complete this other stuffs, right? There's a lot of things you can do with it. You can, of course, duplicate what we have here and replicate it to all the boxes, and you have those effects that you have there. Thank you for staying to the end. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and turn on bell notification in order to be notified when we release new videos. See you in the next one.